Great to be here. This is our 5th episode of Regenerate Your Reality, and it's just so fun doing this because I'm learning in the process, and then we're all just learning together. And fermentation is a passion of mine. It's part of my everyday consumption, and then also I create a whole processing day where I become a producer and produce my own sauerkraut, produce my own ginger beer. This is Quatorial ginger beer, or butterfly pea. We also produce a noni fermentation that is just amazing medicine. And it's just so important to integrate fermentation into our lives. Welcome, Lala.
Hi, Jean. Well, I want to introduce myself just shortly. There's a lot of people I don't know yet, but I'm excited to meet you all. I've been teaching for a while. I'm definitely something is in me with the teaching bug. I was born and raised in Guatemala City, in magical lands. My parents are orchid growers, so right now we're at their house in Guatemala City. And I've been living in Costa Rica for the last 7 years. Lived in the jungle where I met a few of you. Some of you are connected there, it's super fun. And now I'm living up in the mountains in Chirripo, in Costa Rica still. But visiting my parents for holidays, so super happy to be here. I'm a botanist and herbalist and explorer. I'm just obsessed with the process of what happens with plants. Where do they come from? How do we grow them? How do we harvest them? How do we process them? How do we make medicine? How do we interact with them? How do we get them into our lives? So I'm really happy to be sharing this class today and super excited about Jean's book that she wrote that's coming out super soon. So we're going to be sharing a little bit of ferments today. We chose this topic because it's something we can share. I love hands-on learning, and I think the best is to be with the ingredients and to see what's going on from that side and just to see the transformation. So yay! Weaving Remedies, and I'm a co-founder of a school called Ecology Academy with 2 of my favorite people in the world. And we love to teach, we love to share, and we're just geeks, honestly. All 3 of us, we're just full-on geeks that just love to learn and share what we observe from being in nature and transforming.
The book is coming out just in a few months, but it's a regenerative lifestyle guide on just how to simplify our lives and come back to living in harmony with nature. And we are living on a fairy farm where there are little gnomes and fairies that float around, mostly hummingbirds and toucans. And we're farming and growing about half of our own consumption of food, which it's such an honor to work with the land and then consume what we're producing. We also have.
And you've been there for a year and a half, right? It's not even that long.
Yeah, we've been here a year and a half, maybe 2 years now.
Maybe 2, huh? Yeah.
We started on the Caribbean side and then moved over to the Tinamaste side. So it is possible we can grow our own food in a very short period of time, even just getting started with just pots in your front yard, or starting to cultivate a few of your favorite medicinal plants and integrating them into our everyday medicine, our teas, our ferments, our food. So it's fun to learn and then to experiment, put it into practice right away. And that's what this is all about, is putting our regenerative dreams and living regeneration in all ways. Advocate at Kiss the Ground and a partner at Jungle Project, all regenerative projects working towards regenerating the soils and the lands and education.
Yeah. So yeah, maybe we can just briefly explain that sustain and regenerate. We want to live in a regenerate world, right? We want to be able to see the things around us growing, thriving, and getting better. Right now, the state of the earth is kind of alarming and scary. And we've been talking about sustainability for such a long time, and how to be self-sustainable and how to just go into my own place. But the truth is that the world is a community, right? We live in this huge community where we need to start interacting with each other. And part of regenerating a big part is regenerating our guts. So this is a very fun part of the regeneration. As we speak of the regeneration of the world, we're starting to speak as well of the regeneration into our own systems. How do we become beings that are, improving our quality of life, improving our health with all the decisions that we make? Because as of society, the path of the big society is not really going into that direction. So yeah, you can go into the PowerPoint if you want. Perfect. Go to the last one, the one before this one. Thank you. So this is a very beautiful quote, the next one, from Stephen Booner in his book, The Lost Language of Plants. And he says, bacteria are not germs, but the germinators and the fabric of all life on Earth. In declaring war on them, we declare war on the underlying living structure of the planet, on all life forms we can see, on ourselves. And this last couple of years have been very targeted into being anti-germs and using a lot of sanitizers and just killing and making sure that we are, but the truth is that bacteria and yeast and fungi and all these microorganisms have been inhabiting this earth for way longer than us. And this is where all life started, right? This is where we all come from. You can move to the next slide. We're actually, we're more related and more in collaboration with microorganisms than we have, than a lot of us have the idea or can even imagine, right? Bacteria are here to protect us. We have, I think, like 4 times more bacteria and microorganism cells in our bodies and inside and outside of our bodies than we have human cells. So 4 times, for every human cell you have, there's at least 3 or 4 bacteria that are working with you, either in your digestive system, where it's most of them live in there, but we also have bacteria everywhere, right? We have bacteria under our nails, which doesn't mean that it's dirty. They're just protecting us. We have bacteria in our skins, which are the ones that convert the vitamin D, right? So we're able to absorb that. We have bacteria in our hairs. We have bacteria in all of our mucous membranes, right? They're protecting us. There's a beautiful balance that's happening there. So they're actually our allies, and they are our ancestors, because this is where we all come from, right? We were all once really tiny cell that just evolved into conditions of, that got us to where we are today. We have been, our culture has moved towards the monocropping of things, and kind of like, our agriculture systems is based on monocrops, and our diets are also becoming mono diets. And we know what, in the supermarket, we find the same, depending on where you are, right? But we've been finding less and less veggies and fruits, but now the trend is to become more biodiverse. And why is this important? Because we are looking, we are biodiverse systems, because our system does not thrive, is not going to do well if we are just eating one same thing every day, right? We're going to be more resilient. We're going to be more healthy if we are eating diversity of foods. And all the foods that we get, this beautiful pineapple that we have here, or the cabbage, that we're going to prep today, all of these beautiful things, they are covered with bacteria and yeast, especially if they're grown organically, right? Because that's one of the bigger things, that we are not really growing all of our things organically. So this is a big concern, as we move into monoculture diets and monoculture crops, then we start to just, strengthen one specific thing, and then we need to use pesticides and we need to use everything else to kill everything that wants to target this one thing, because of course it's vulnerable if we are into monocrops, and humanity is a monocrop. Just going to leave that there. You can go back to the presentation. Thank you, Jean. Jean, you there? Thank you. Cool. Yeah, and there's this inner knowledge that we all have that, when we are in nature, go back to the last screen, the last one, thank you. That, as we go into the cities and we start to feel kind of isolated in our apartments, we can start to feel, all of the pain of the world and a lot of things that, might be a little bit kind of like, what's going on? And then we go into nature and we feel so much better, and, things just start to kind of, lighten, we feel better, we start to feel and vibrate with this energy, right? So it is definitely, there's a lot of medicine that we don't know in just being in nature, that we're wanting to reconnect with, and that we want to share with you. And as we are eating from our environment, we are also interacting with it. We are wanting to get, this is one of the ways to get closer. As we invite all of these microbes into our diet, we are becoming interconnecting beings. And this is what creates resilience. We can go to the next one. So there's a lot of amazing things that have become part of our culture, right? So this is the definition that you see there. Want to go back? Is the first definition of culture. Culture is the socially transmitted behavior patterns, arts, beliefs, institutions, and other products of human work and thought. So culture was created by our relationship with our environment, with what we grow, with what we eat, with what we, everything. And then this becomes ritual, and this becomes art, and this becomes beliefs. But it all comes from nature, right? By observing and living with it. And now it's a little bit more complex, and we've kind of have this like monoculture as well that we all think is the right one, and we're eating things that might not be appropriate for our region, and things have to travel around. For example, bananas, we find bananas everywhere in the world, but where's it coming from? At what cost am I getting this banana here, right? Especially with the chocolate, right? And the cacao. This is a really beautiful example because cacao is one of the most amazing ferments that we all love, right? And some of us have it very commonly in our diet, but just chocolate, the Swiss chocolate, or all these chocolates that started to get into the mainstream culture, there's just basically milk and sugar, right? There's only a little bit of cacao in them, and they're coming at a very high cost. So just to start to question, like, what is our culture? We kind of feel like some of us have migrated, our population, our cultures have migrated around the world, and what keeps us grounded has been the culture, has been our foods, has been our diet, right? How do we connect back into these traditions? Some ferments that we all love, also like all of the cultured cheese. It was a way to preserve milk, right? Which is a very perishable product if we don't preserve it. So we started to make yogurts and cheese, and actually there's a lot of benefits that come from this, especially the enhancement of flavor. We start to make wines, we start to make chichas, and coffee is also an amazing ferment. We can also ferment different types of meats, like salami, right, is a type of kind of cured fermented meat. We can ferment flour to make bread. There's so many things that happen in our culture, so many delicious and amazing things. You can move to the next one. Thank you. These are some of the benefits from fermenting and transforming our foods through the action of microorganisms. So by fermenting or pre-digesting, right, our foods, we are starting to break down these components. Basically, it's some kind of external digestion, you know, like spiders do. Spiders they like kind of put some enzymes into a ball of web in which they cover their insects with, and then they just, with a straw, they just like suck into it. So they wouldn't be able to absorb all of these amazingness of the bug if we just like, you know, if we eat it just like that, because it's kind of hard and chunky and we don't really have the digestive system on it. But with enzymes and you know, these kinds of processes, we are able to digest them. I'm actually, you know, there's different constitutions, but I can't digest raw cabbage, and I can definitely eat a lot of fermented cabbage. So it definitely changes and pre-digests the nutrients so we can absorb them. In this way, we are able to remineralize our bodies. You know, there's in the past, a lot of people used to, when water started to become polluted and we started to live in big cities, we started to drink ferments instead of water, right? Because it was the only healthy source of hydration. And also ferments contain a lot of minerals from the plants or the mushrooms or the whatever we are ferment that we would not be able to absorb if we just ate, you know, the raw thing. We also get the nutrient enhancement and flavor enhancement. There's a lot of nutrients that through having microorganisms into our foods are going to be easily absorbed. A lot of vitamins like vitamin C, vitamin A is enhanced. The absorption is enhanced by the presence of these microorganisms. We can even say that all vegetable sources, fruits and vegetables and plants, they don't really produce B12, right, which is a very important vitamin in our lives. And with fermentation, we are able to produce the B12 that's super important. They also promote detoxification of our bodies. They're going to, of course, promote longevity because we are able to break down our foods best. We're going to have less, you know, heavy byproducts from all of the processes of our metabolism, which promotes rejuvenation and is going to improve our health, right? It doesn't mean that ferments are going to be a medicine, you know, this is a cure for cancer. And this is an interesting thing because, you know, at some point it was like, oh, we're trying to look for one cure for everything, which is like a panacea or the heal all. We're like, yes, one thing, we're going to find this one thing. And the truth is that the road to wholeness and the road to, you know, improving our lives is not just one thing. It's not just going to be like, oh, let's eat ferments and that's it. But to actually, you know, have a certain diversity of tools that are going to get us to that place. They are also, you know, as we ingest ferments, as we consume them, we are ingesting live bacteria cultures, which are called probiotic. Probiotic is basically just living being. Biotic is a life, right? That is supporting life, right? Pro is something that supports. So these are going to support life, and they are living beings that are going to colonize our gut. And we're going to get different microorganisms like lactobacillus, lactic acid bacteria, enzymes, and in some cases, a certain amount of yeast that are going to basically colonize our gut, and they're going to create, you know, they bind into the specific sites where other pathogens could bind. So they protect you from basically other pathogens that could be harmful for us. Perfect. Can move to the next one. So this is a baby with a big belly. And as we all grew up, we definitely needed to be breastfed in the first months of our lives, whether we did or we didn't. But the reason for that is because mother's milk has a specific type of sugar that our digestive system is basically colonized with one specific bacteria, the only one that can digest a specific type of sugar that is undigestible if we don't have this bacteria. What this causes is that it creates some kind of like protection in our digestive tract, that when we are very vulnerable, of course we are babies, we are at the most vulnerable state of our lives, but we're actually very strong because this one bacteria is colonizing all of our gut and it doesn't allow anything else to enter. So that allows us to have a healthy childhood. If we are kind of like out of this, if we don't get breastfed, then maybe this will bring problems into the future, into our digestive tracts. And maybe as a baby, some of us will have intolerances and, and then grow up into these unhealthy patterns that can definitely be worked through. There's two primary fermentation process. One of the microorganisms that's very important for this process is lactic acid bacteria and other bacteria, but mostly the lactic acid bacteria is what we're going to talk about today. And the second one is going to be yeasts, right? We know mostly about yeast because, we are a culture that's full of wine and beer and bread. All of this is due to the action of yeast, of bubbly and amazing yeasts. And it's actually a combination of both of them that we get in most of our ferments. But lactic acid bacteria, both of these work mostly in anaerobic, which is without oxygen environments, and when we work in fermentation. And so they're going to be basically submerged into the liquid if we're doing a sauerkraut, or submerged into the liquid if we're doing a vinegar, which is what we're going to be playing with today. So with lactic acid bacteria, we can do pickles, we can do sauerkraut, we can do yogurt, and that's what gives the taste of the sourness of these ferments is the lactic acid bacteria. And lactic acid is what is produced. Lactic is kind of sounds like milk, right? Like lactose, but it's because it's digesting certain sugars and producing this acid that's very commonly produced in milk ferments, but it's also produced with other types of sugars. The lactic acid is an amazing thing for us to digest because it helps us to break down our food, other things that we digest. And it also keeps, it kind of helps us break down fats. It helps to also absorb vitamins and minerals easier if we have the presence of these substances. With the yeast, we're going to produce mostly carbon dioxide, right? That's what creates the fizziness and the bubbles in all of our ferments, and alcohol. And in some cases, we will have a second bacteria that comes into play. In this case, with the vinegar, through this other bacteria that's called the acetic acid bacteria, right? Acetic acid is just a geeky name for vinegar. And these bacteria are going to eat the alcohol and produce vinegar. So this is what we want to get to today. So basically, if we are doing a wine or we're doing kombucha, we're doing kefir, all of these ferments will, at the end of the process, if we don't stop it and bottle it and refrigerate it, or keep it in a way that we're not losing this alcohol, these bacteria will eat the alcohol and produce vinegar. So this is some of the recipes that we're going to do today into the easy way. I hope you got your ingredients set up.
Yeah.
If you don't have your ingredients ready, take a moment and go collect them, because we're going to get started with the sauerkraut. If you want to put your screen, feel free to do it. And then maybe Jean can guide us into a little moment of questions if there are questions as we go.
Yeah, we
so
can answer questions at the end, and we'll just get right into it, Lala. This is so exciting and so important for us to integrate into our lives. I've integrated it into my weekly rhythm of life so that if I were to buy this at a market, this would cost me like $15 for this amount that I create just in a short period of time. And this is just from Friday in the tropics. Everything kind of
so fast,
a little faster, but you can kind of see, let's see, you can kind of see I have some liquid up, and it's, I don't know if you can see the bubbles here. Let's see, maybe a little bit, but I also put all of my favorite medicines into it that I want to ingest in the week. Like I have gotu kola in it. I have dill seeds and basil as well. But go ahead, Lala, and start making these recipes.
Get choppy.
We have anyone else here making some recipes with us?
Yara's there. Who is it? Cool. Okay, so let's see. We're going to first chop our cabbage, right? We want our cabbage to be organic if we can, ideally, because this will contain the lactic acid bacteria that we need for this process, right? So, you know, you can chop it in many ways. I prefer to chop it in like long, kind of thin slices, because that really helps to, you know, the end product will be kind of like stringy. But you can also chop it really thin, but it might be a little bit dissolved. So you can either use the core or not. And I just like to chop it this way, just to make kind of like long shreds, kind of spaghetti looking cabbage. And we want to keep some of the big leaves, right, on the side. Some of these leaves, so we can use them afterwards to cover our ferments. And we're just gonna choppy. We can also add other things into our ferments, like Jean was saying. I love adding dill because I just love dill. And it's really a good digestive, right? It helps us to move gas, and as it will help with the fermentation process as well. I also like to put some garlic, or I also put some black pepper. I like to get black peppercorns into my ferments, or I can also grind them. I prefer not to buy ground black pepper because, you know, we lose a lot of the essential oils with the storage. So I like to keep my spices fresh. Okay, so we're gonna do half of the cabbage for now. But for a full head of cabbage, we are going to use around 1 tablespoon of salt. So for this half, I can start with half a tablespoon, or I can start even with 1 teaspoon of it. So we can we don't over salt our ferments, right? So we're gonna put it in a bowl, ideally wooden or plastic, but not metal. And we can put some herbs into that. You know, everything is gonna be massaged through. So I just kind of like to chop it with my hands. I'm just gonna do dill and cabbage because it's one of my favorites, but I also have carrots, and you can do ginger or turmeric. I love adding turmeric into my ferments. So you can add anything you want into it. If you put a purple cabbage, just a little bit of the purple cabbage will dye your whole sauerkraut purple. or if you put a purple onion as well, it will just make it all purple, which is super cool if you're into colors as well, which is also medicinal, right? Because purple is an indication of antioxidants in nature. So we're gonna get a lot of this medicine. Oh, and I'm gonna put this really nice onion. I like to chop it with all the greens and just put it all in there.
I was asked to go back to the ingredients screen. I'm gonna share that.
It doesn't say anything in the sauerkraut. It's just cabbage, salt, and and other ingredients and more, whatever you want. Okay. Okay, you got it?
Yep.
So
yes,
I'm also
perfect.
gonna put,
thank you.
Cool. Thank you, Teresa or Veronica. Teresa Veronica. So I'm gonna put some turmeric too, because I got some fresh, nice turmeric that wants to be used. I also do turmeric beer with the excess turmeric I harvest, because it's, once you harvest turmeric, it just goes wild and there's a huge harvest. So we can grate, we can chop, we can just hand break our herbs into it too. Yeah, so this is a great way to also incorporate our medicine into our life, right? If we're having like a little bit of a, you know, which we all are having nervous breakdowns. I don't know about you, but me definitely. It's been crazy times. So I like to add some herbs into that, although ferments on their own, they're amazing to help us keep a steady emotional balance. So I'm going to put around a teaspoon with it of salt. And then we're just going to start kind of like mixing it in. I tend to be a little bit lazy. I like to conserve my energy for other things, but you can start massaging now, or you can just let it sit for a little bit, let the water get out. And then you can start massaging it. We've got some masseuses and massage practitioners in the group. They're going to be doing a great job. It's a great way to release stress as well. Once you're massaging your ferments, you can even pound it a little bit. You can go like, ah, and you can just put all your prayers and all your love, because this is what you are going to be ingesting and sharing with your friends. Okay. Anything else you want to add, Jean, with your ferments? Any other fun things?
Yeah, I think it's just such a nice rhythm to get into each week, after you go to the market, coming back with your fresh ingredients, getting inspired, and just whatever's in excess around the house, like you said, turmeric and ginger. I love adding that to almost everything that I consume has it almost now. This is the ginger turmeric beer that I like to make each week, and you can see the bug, the ginger turmeric bug. I'll post a recipe for that. It's very, very simple as well, but I like to consume this on a daily just to help promote preventative health and also just wellness all the time.
Someone raised their hand.
Oh, yeah.
You wanna?
Yeah.
Hi, can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
You mentioned purple. You mentioned adding some purple cabbage or purple things to the ferment. Is there any reason you wouldn't do, like right now I have a a fresh organic whole purple cabbage. Is there any reason not to do the whole thing in the purple cabbage?
No, no reason.
Go
You
ahead.
can use just a purple cabbage. I just said that because just a little bit of it will dye a green or a white cabbage
said it
really
was color.
easily. Or just a little bit of beets, right? But yeah, you can use the whole thing.
Yeah.
Have you
Thank you for your
ever done
question.
the whole purple? How does it taste?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
It
excellent.
tastes great. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for your question. Any other questions so far? Let's see. Dan has a question.
You can just take yourself on mute and ask it, or put it in the chat if you feel shy.
Dan, you want to go
Yeah.
ahead? Just
Yeah.
unmute yourself.
The question is, are there vegetables that are suggested as not good fermentation ingredients, like sweet potatoes or green onions?
Green onions are great. Sweet potatoes, I've seen some people adding them. They tend to be a little bit starchy and get your ferment a little mushy. But when you do kimchi, which is a different recipe, usually there's some starches in it, so it's okay. Just as long as you don't put more than like, I don't know, I would say like 5% if you're gonna do sweet potatoes. That can be too starchy. But yeah,
What about
you know,
sweet peppers?
Peppers are great. You know, they're just gonna give you a little bit more water. What else? I was thinking, yeah, I like to put actually a little bit of fruit into my ferments, just to chop like half an apple or something to kind of balance the acidity, and it creates just really nice ferments. That's why carrots are good too, because they're a little bit sweet, right?
Great, thank you. That's different, seeing fruit in. Yeah.
Yeah. So as we are massaging, we're going to see some of the juices come out, right? This is where we want to be. And just with a little bit of talking and massaging, we got to this beautiful, just kind of like already pre-digested cabbage. We're going to use jars, right? Because this is where we're going to ferment. Ideally glass. If you don't have glass, plastic is okay too. Just make sure it's food safe. And what I've noticed with plastic is that you don't want to clean your plastic with any like scrubs that can kind of like cut it through, because then that, you know, it's not good for you to be eating all this plastic. But if your plastic is clean and you keep it safe, it's okay. But ideally glass, and plastic lids are going to be better. Give me a second.
And there's a question about what kind of salt to use.
Yeah, that's a good question. I prefer sea salt or any other salt with minerals. Sometimes I use black salt. We have a really nice mineral black salt here in Guatemala, which will give other minerals. It has higher sulfur, which is good for fighting disease and for detoxifying your body. And then we're going to, you really want to make sure your jars are clean, right? Because you are going to be growing definitely whatever is in your jar. And then we're going to push it down into our jars. Let's see. And as we're pushing it down, we want to make sure that the juices are coming up and covering our cabbage. Right? There you go. And we want to make sure we're using a jar that's appropriate size to the amount that we have. So for one cabbage is going to be around a liter jar, which can look like something like this. I'm definitely a jar hoarder. These jars belong to my grandmother, no joke. And I got them when she passed, and my aunts were like, what are we gonna do with these jars? I'm like, no, they're my jars. Give them to me. You know how to call the witches, right? Just get the jars out. That's when we'll come. So you want to make sure you are very packing this tight. and getting all of the juices out so we can have the beautiful, clean, anaerobic, right? Remember, the no oxygen environment that will promote the bacteria that we want. That's why we want to get all the juices out. We didn't add any water into this, right? We just got the juices out of the veggies and the cabbage. So you can see it there. Yeah, it's nice and juicy. And I'm going to probably after class, so we can move on and get to other fun stuff. I'm going to chop the rest of the cabbage and just fill it up. We want to make sure it's under the liquid. So there's different ways, you know, there's crocks, there's weights that you can use. You want to make sure your weight is very clean, sanitized, however you want it to be. It's a little bit hard with with rocks to sterilize them, but you can. So some people like to collect kind of like the river rocks, the round river rocks that you can use. But you know, with just a little bit of the cabbage, a big leaf, you can put it in the top and just push it in there. And then this will make all of your liquids come up, right? And it will keep it all down. So there you go.
Beautiful.
That's it. Easy peasy. And now we're going to take care, right? We're going to make sure we keep this in an ideal temperature, which in the tropics, it will ferment a little bit faster than in colder and temperate or high mountain climates. And you want to keep them in a dark place. Certain ferments, I'm not going to say which ones right now, prefer and like a little bit of heat and sun. But if you live or if you are in the winter, if there's a strong winter and there's no area in your house is a little bit warm, your ferments might get a little bit slow, or they might even, your bacteria might die, right? Because this is what happens in the winter. But if you have like a warmer kitchen and you're used to cooking and keeping the fires, that would be a nice place. But with that said, you don't want to put it in a busy area. So maybe if fireplace is too much, it's too hot. You just want to keep it at room temperature, right? It's going to be ideal. You want to make sure it's away from kids and pets, so they don't pass through and break your jars. And you're going to close it, right? We want to make sure it's closed. You can open it a little bit so the pressure comes out and you're not creating a time bomb that's just going to explode all over your kitchen, which happens, and this is also part of the learning process. But especially with the sauerkraut, you're going to you can open it, and it's okay to interact with them. So tomorrow I will come and I will probably push it down a little bit more so the liquid comes up again, because we'll start to see there's bubbles in here, and they will start to kind of like, you know, bubble, which is where the word ferment comes from, ferver, which means to boil, or hervir in Spanish. So we're going to see that bubble action. It might take a couple more days if you are in winter, which some of you are at the moment, and in cooler places. But mostly we're going to, you know, just the first few days, you want to open it, kind of burp it, push it down if you want with your clean hands, of course, or with a clean tool. Also, wooden spoons, if you have wooden spoons in your house, they also collect bacteria, right? And you can kind of push it down with them, and you're collecting the bacteria from other ferments into your ferments. You want to go back to the last one? And I think there's two more questions. Yeah. You want let's see, the last one? You were good.
The question,
Yes.
Did you really just use only 1 teaspoon for that whole bowl of cabbage?
Yes, it gets really salty.
Wow, then I've been doing way too much, because I don't like it salty, and mine's way salty. I probably would put like 4 tablespoons. of
Yeah,
salt?
no, I don't like it salty either. And it's not so good for us. There's a lot of salts already in our herbs. So you don't really need to put that much salt.
I'm always scared about it making not being enough and making it spoil or something.
It's good. There's actually some ferments where you don't need salt, like a lot of herbal ferments that we do like this. There's a traditional ferment called gudunk, that is just an herbal paste. And the herbs and all these veggies have their own salts to help preserve this. So don't worry about it.
Thanks. Have you used pink Himalayan salt versus the gray Celtic salt? Which one is better?
Yes. I haven't used a gray Celtic salt because it's not in my bioregion, but pink Himalayan salt is easily accessible. It depends on what you want. Honestly, it doesn't matter. Yeah, whichever you prefer. I like to keep it bioregional and local, right?
Awesome.
Which is also going to be better. So Dan, I think, has a question too. Are you done? Okay, cool. So you want to go back to the presentation? There was one more thing. I like to put sometimes bowls under my ferments, especially for the first 2 days. If you have wooden counters or things that can get stained, go back to the last one. You want to go back to you have to go 2 slides back. One more. There you go. So you keep a tub under them just for the first days. Especially if you're in the hot tropics, they will ferment really fast and the juices will start to come out. This can be a little bit corrosive depending on the materials that you have. So you can just go ahead and put a bowl to collect. And like I said, make sure you release the pressure. Cool. So do you want to go back to the recipe, the last slide, so we can move into the vinegar? How's the Yara team going there? Are you done? Yay. Cool. Perfect. So we can move into the vinegars, which is a very, very fun and a little bit more rare ferment to do. Just gonna clean it up a little bit. Are there any questions? Oh, let's see. If you were not in the tropics, how long would you say to keep it sealed until opening it? You're going to see bubbles. Like I said, you're going to see the fermentation happening. Oh, that's a good question. Also for eating, when do we eat it? There's a lot of studies, a lot of geeks that have been studying this in the scientific world. Oh, perfect. So that's what you meant. So for eating it, it depends on the fermentation speed, of course. Some ferments will, if we're in the tropics, in a week, you're going to be able to eat it. But there is a little bit of science behind it, where people say that after a month, you're going to collect the bacteria and it's going to reach kind of a peak of healthy bacteria that are going to be amazing for your gut. But there's ferments that go for over a year, right? There's kimchis that are fermented in crocks and just kind of like buried. So it depends on your taste as well. In the beginning, I've noticed that the first ferments tend to be a little bit more wild and different, but then it kind of stabilizes into a delicious taste, which I prefer after kind of a couple of weeks to a month. But I leave them for like 3 months sometimes, or sometimes for years.
Just to clarify, the longer that you keep it fermented, kind of the more the flavor will kind of ease down a little bit. Is that what you mean?
Not necessarily. It will, but it will just kind of balance and get a little bit more stable, like consistent towards the batches that you do, because this is a wild ferment. We're not inoculating with any other bacteria or anything that like a stable culture like we do with sourdough, for example, or with yogurt. We already have the culture with kombucha too. We know what the taste is going to be like. So in the beginning, there might be some other different yeasts that have different tastes. So you will get a more consistent ferment if you let it go after a month. Does that make sense, Larissa?
It does. Thank you.
Cool.
Yes, thank you.
Perfect. Yeah. Any other questions before we move into the vinegar? Okay.
I love
Perfect.
making vinegar just with the fruit scraps. We have a ongoing pineapple ferment going, and these are pineapples from our land, so they're even more special to make into a nice vinegar. This is a ferment that's been going just a few days. I just keep adding my vinegar to it and fresh farm water. So it's
Yeah, nice.
smelling like I could drink this like a nice a nice wine right now.
Well, it is. It's a it's what we call the tepache, which is a kind of a fresh ferment of pineapple. And if we let it ferment for a little bit more, we get a little bit more of a chicha, like an alcoholic kind of chicha. If we let it ferment a little bit more, we're going to get a vinegar. So that's what we're going to do. So you could drink it now. Drink it, drink it, drink it. Go, 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 go. Go, Jean.
I'll drink a little bit. So right now I have this really beautiful ginger beer, Clitorial. That's what makes it this beautiful color. And I'll drink this to our health. Cheers to all of our health and our wellness.
Hello. Hello. I have a little tea blend.
Cheers to the banquet of life.
So until this morning, I didn't know what vinegar I was going to make, but I was able to find some really nice organic pineapple that was very ripe. I went to the shop and they had a really nice supermarket that keeps organic stuff. And there was a very ripe pineapple and I'm like, I'm going to save you before, it just goes into trash. So I'm just scouting. I love to do it with apples when they're in season, but I only use local apples. I love doing banana vinegar as well. Maybe we can go into the presentation for a second. Right. So what we're going to need for this one this one, perfect. For the vinegar, we're just going to need fruit, which is not super ripe fruit. We want to make sure that our fruit is still in good condition. Sometimes ripe fruit can have some mold and we want to avoid that. Especially with bananas, we can get a little bit of fruit flies and fruit fly larvae, which are not going to be terrible, but we're kind of like larvae freaked out, sensitive people. So don't do it. But I don't mind, the little maggots in the in the food because they're just basically, condensed. They have a lot of protein that's just being made out of the fruit that they're eating, right? They haven't seen anything else in their lives. They're only eating your fruit. So especially if you do like guava vinegar or, use fruits that tend to have maggots or apples, it's fine. Don't be scared of them. It's just going to be a little bit more healthy. And anyways, humanity somehow needs to move into eating insects more often. We already do eat crustaceans, which are very closely related to insects. So like Jean said, with pineapples, we can only use the skins if we want. With apples also, we can use the cores, the heart of the apples and skins. If some pieces are a little bit too fermented, I might avoid them already, but it's fine. And we're going to chop the pineapple or the skins or the heart of the pineapple too. Just gonna put it all in here. So any type of fruit that you prefer. And this is going to be a long process. So today we're just gonna do the beginning of it. And then I'll show you some pictures of how it looks in the later stages. And it depends on the fruit. If we do bananas, for example, they have a lot of sugars already available. So we use bananas that are when they are at their peak yellowness, not when they're black, ideally, just when they are yellow. And with bananas, they're kind of the easier ones to do vinegar with because you don't really need to add water or anything else. You just put the bananas into a bucket. You can put the peels as well. You can kind of peel them and then throw the peels in there. Or some people just like to do with banana peels, water, and add some sugar. But if you add the banana, it has a lot of sugars on its own. So you won't need to put anything else. Okay, is that clear? So bananas, just peel the bananas, throw them in a bucket, cover it, and let it sit for a month or so. With pineapple, we might want to add a little bit more because some pineapples are a little bit more sour, right? So we want to add a little bit of sugar. Same goes with apples, and most other fruits need a little bit of a kickstart with sugar or honey or panela, or whichever you prefer to use. Okay. So we can use just the cores and the heart, like I said, or we can also throw in some of the pineapple itself. I'm gonna just go ahead and do a batch of this pineapple vinegar with all of it. I'm gonna eat some of it as well. It looks so tasty.
Yes, the key really is organic. If you're fermenting with non-organic items, you're going to be consuming those pesticides. So just making sure that you know where your source of veggies and fruits come from. And another thing that I ran into when I first started fermenting, especially in the States, is not having chlorinated or having unchlorinated water. So what I did when I was living in the States is I would boil the water with the cap off to make sure all the chlorine was out of the water before I used that as my unchlorinated water base. So that's super important, because if there's chlorine in the water, then the ferments won't live.
Yep, that's a great one. Also, you can let it sit in the sun. If you are in a sunny conditions, you can let your water sit in the sun for a couple of hours, and the chlorine will evaporate as well. So this is what we do for watering our plants as well. You can just fill up tubs and let it sit in the sun, and the chlorine will come out. Are there any questions? No? Good? Okay, so I'm just chopping this pineapple into my container, wanting to get it a little bit full, as full as I can. Let's see it here. And I also like to pre-mash my fruit. You can also let it sit outside for a little bit, especially with apples. You want to let them brown before you put them in your container, or cover your container, or put the water, because this will kind of like accelerate the decomposition process that we're looking for. It's not a putrid process, right? We want this to be a healthy ferment. So this is what we're aiming for. Look, so now I can fit the rest of it. It's cool. And let's see, still fit this skin. It's getting juicy. Okay, so we're just gonna fit all of this in here. If you're gonna use sugar, you can go ahead and dissolve it a little bit. Depending on the type of sugar, you can heat it up, but you don't want to throw hot water into this, because these are live ferments. We want to keep the bacteria and the yeast, the natural yeast, alive. So, ooh, look at all this juice already. You have so much of the pineapple juice coming out just by mashing it. And that's what I do with apples as well, or with any other fruit that I use. It's not bananas. With bananas, I just literally throw it in a bucket and close it, and that's it, because they have so much juice, right? If we leave a banana in the counter, it will produce its own vinegar. It will get watery, and it just tastes like vinegar. Okay, there we go. And then if I'll have another pineapple tomorrow, I can keep adding skins for the first few days, right? If it's apple season, you could do the same, just do cores, and the skins of the apples are going to be enough. I also have one of my sweet, beautiful sisters in Estonia, who I taught how to do apple cider vinegar. And she started to do apple cider vinegar just from the pulp that her in-laws were they have like few apple trees in their house. I went to visit them, and they have an apple press to make juice, and just with the leftover from the juicing, you can use and do you can use that to do the vinegar. So what was the question there? Sugar? Yeah, any sugar, anything that's gonna feed it for a little bit. I honestly like to use honey, just a little bit of honey. When it's available, I get this really nice local fresh honey. But if not, you can use organic sugar, brown sugar, white sugar, any sugar that you prefer and that you think is healthy for you.
And I don't even use my pineapples are so sweet that I don't even use sugar with pineapples. I only use sugar with some other fruits that don't have as much sugar. So it's really, all of this is kind of up to your own intuition. We all are the medicine. We know what our bodies need. And same with salt. I mean, it just all depends on your taste buds and our preference. Any other questions? We're kind of at the end of the hour. I think Lala, you're freezing too. I'm not sure. Let's see.
You mentioned chlorinated regular tap water and putting it in the sun or boiling it. How long would you have to boil it?
Yeah, I think my internet's a little. Can you still see me or hear me?
Yep, we can hear you now. Yeah, so with water, you just boil it and keep with the cap off, because the cap off is where the chlorine will go into the air. And letting your water sit in the sun, it's just a few hours. Really, you're just you're able to allow the chlorine to evaporate into the air.
Okay, thanks. About how long to boil? Like 15 minutes, or is that too longer?
Just to boil, really, it's just to boil it. And as you're boiling it, the chlorine goes into the air, and then you want to let it sit for and get back to room temperature. You never want to put any too hot of water into your ferments. That will kill the good bacteria. I think Lala her internet might have just gone off, but we are at the end of the hour, and it's been such a pleasure to share this workshop and all learn together. If we have any other questions, we can drop them into the chat. And some of the commonly asked questions we get is some of these questions. And hey, Lala, you're back. We're kind of running at the end of the hour, so I'm asking if we have any other
lost Wi-Fi for a second, you know. It's just, hey, you see me?
Yeah, just a second on me. Can you again?
Freezing over here. Excuse.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, any other questions we can drop into the chat. Oh yeah, I see a few more. Can you do vinegar with flowers? You can add flowers to any of your ferments that are edible. I love adding flowers because it adds that extra little flower power, and there's so many medicinals within flowers that are edible. And the other question is, my grandmother had a vinegar mother that is still alive. How do I preserve it?
Yeah. Can you put the presentation so I can show a little bit of the mothers? I got a little Wi-Fi problem. Okay, cool. Just to find that. These are all vinegars that I made. The corner on the right is a kombucha, which is a SCOBY, right? The SCOBY goes for symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast. The one in the top is a jaboticaba vinegar. Top right, top left is a water apple vinegar. The one on the bottom is mango. And the center one is guava, Peruvian guava vinegar, and you will get that kind of SCOBY pellicle. So you can use that SCOBY after, we're going to leave this for a week or two until we see a little bit of a brown juice. Then we're going to filter it. And then after that, you want to add the SCOBY, and there will be a SCOBY forming on top of your ferment. So you want to keep that and transfer that. If your grandmother gave you a SCOBY, whoa, that's amazing. Keep it going, right? So that's amazing. And then you go to the next one. These are all different yeasts that can be formed naturally. It doesn't always form a SCOBY immediately because, there's not always bacteria that are dominant, but it will eventually form this SCOBY once you get it a little bit more aged. You can go to the next one. Here on the right, we see some mold. So you can see the difference between a yeast and a mold. The yeast will give certain flavors depending on the yeast, as you saw the last two, and the one on the left here are a little bit different to each other. They're just different types of yeasts. So it's okay. Yeasts are friendly. We don't want to eat mold, right? For obvious reasons. We can get mold toxins that we don't, even if we remove the culture, there's toxins, mycotoxins that are not going to be good for us. Yeah, you want to move to the next one? Sweet. I think that any other questions on the vinegars? You good? Okay.
Yeah. Thank
Feel
you
free to
so much.
message me. Yeah. Or Jean, both of us. We're great teachers. She is also an amazing teacher and friend. So feel free to message with your questions.
Yeah, we'll send out a follow-up email where we have the directions again. We'll send the replay. You can share the replay with any of your friends. And yeah, it's just such an honor to be here and to share this. Next month, we have a really exciting webinar all about self-love. And like I said, I wrote a book called Regenerate Your Reality, a regenerative living guide, and the website has all of this a lot of this information on it. And the webinar series is essentially aspects of how to regenerate our reality from our mind, our earth, and starting with our center and our own bacteria and rippling that outward to our soils, to our communities, and knowing that we are the powerful forces of nature. And just by us individually regenerating, that ripples outwards, and there's so much impact that we can have on our families, on our communities, on the bacteria in our soils just outside our garden, the bacteria that are in our foods, and really not being afraid of good bacteria that we cultivate. So I'm going to drop the pre-sale link in the chat, and I'll also send up a follow-up able. I'm going to share with you the next webinar. Let's see. So this is the book. Follow us on Instagram. I'll drop in Lala's Instagram as well in the chat. And just knowing that we are the hope. We're the ones that our grandmothers have been waiting for. We're all part of this regenerative movement, and each of us has a very important role to play and in this grand act of life. And it's just so exciting that now more than ever is the time for us to collectively act and to collectively move into this way of living like our ancestors did, a way of living that is closer to our lands and growing our way out of crisis, literally through making our own ferments, through growing our own food forests. And I love Lala's herbal products. I am a huge fan. I have all of these in my apothecary.
One more question. What do we do with the vinegar after it's ready, after 2 weeks? So we filter it and we can press it with a cheesecloth and just collect the juice. that's when we would add the mother, if we have a mother, or we can add a little bit of a live vinegar to it and just let it ferment. I like to age my vinegars for a couple of months after that, just with a cloth on top. We put a cloth and a rubber band on top of it. And then we're going to filter it. If you want to clarify it and have a vinegar that looks kind of like this, like more clear, you can just let it sediment, and you're going to basically like slowly filter it so you get all the sediments out, and you'll get a really nice and clear vinegar. Because this came up because you were talking about the products, but a lot of my products, like the syrups that I do, contain some of these live vinegars. So it's also really good to extract vitamins and minerals out of herbs and create really amazing remineralizing elixirs. And it's also really nice for our respiratory health as well, right? All these things are going to help us protect ourselves for the future.
All about activating our self-love, and Estaria will be helping us guide us into a really nice self-love voice activation. And this is on the 14th, and it's kind of, for us, it's like an act of rebellion to do it on we don't necessarily like to schedule our life around the holidays that are global holidays. We really believe that self-love should happen every day, that many of our celebrations that we might just do a few times a year, giving thanks every day, giving gratitude every day, giving self-love every day, and integrating some of these holistic tools into our life all the time. But the date is February 14th, and it will be really fun, and I hope you all can join us. And just knowing that we are the forces of nature, that we are the agents of change, and it's so exciting to be alive during these times, to really bring in this great transition in the fall of the patriarchy and the rise of the matriarchy, and we're all part of it. So thank you for joining us, and we will send a follow-up email and share it with your friends. And yeah, just thank you so much. Any last words, Lala?
I'm just excited to see what y'all are going to create with your ferment. So feel free to tag me or send me your pictures or questions, and use your nose and your instinct, connect to your instinct again to see what's the best for you, right? Try to not follow just one teacher, but have many, many teachers around you, and just enjoy it. Love you all.
Love you all. Sending you so much love. Kisses from our garden to yours, and we'll see you next time. Mwah, mwah.
Oh, thank you, Jean.
Thanks, everyone.